Welcome to Fun Facts Daily, your source for just the good stuff. Monday through Friday, we're bringing fun facts and news you can use, all carefully curated to uplift and inform. So give yourself a break, relax, and learn something awesome in just a few minutes every day. Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Wood, and today we're going to be learning all about the Odyssey. But before we get into the facts, let's warm up our brains with a little challenge to see if you can tell fact from fiction. Consider this. The Odyssey is an ancient epic poem telling the story of Odysseus on his journey home after the Trojan War. If most people know anything about the Trojan War, it's probably the story of the Trojan Horse. Legend has it the Greek army built a massive wooden horse they gave to the Trojans as a peace offering. The Trojans then brought the horse into their city, not realizing there were soldiers hiding inside. That night, the Greek soldiers came out and easily overran the city. It's seen as one of the greatest covert military operations of the ancient world, but did it really happen? What do you think? Is the story of the Trojan Horse an actual fact or just too good to be true? We'll find out at the end of the episode. Now for your word of the day. Our word for today is Odyssey. That's Odyssey. An odyssey is a long wandering voyage with many obstacles to overcome. Today, people use the term Odyssey to describe any extended, difficult trip. You might hear someone refer to a difficult academic program, a complex medical recovery, or a multi-country travel itinerary as an Odyssey. It signifies a journey where someone overcomes obstacles and grows from the experience. The word Odyssey originates from the ancient epic poem. The protagonist, Odysseus, spends 10 years attempting to travel back to his home island off Ithaca after the Trojan War. Along the route, he faces sea monsters, hostile deities, and natural disasters. The character was so famous for enduring a grueling, transformative return trip that his name became synonymous with the concept itself. By the late 19th century, English speakers officially adopted Odyssey as a generic noun for any big, eventful voyage. Time for your daily high five, our top 5 fun facts about the Odyssey. Number 1. The Odyssey was performed for hundreds of years before it was written. Scholars trace the origin of the Odyssey to the 8th century BCE. Back then, in Greece, stories were typically spoken, not written. Traveling bards, called rhapsodes, memorized the poem and recited it aloud at public festivals. Performers used a rhythmic meter known as dactylic hexameter to help them memorize the lines. They also relied on repeating phrases like rosy-fingered dawn to maintain the meter while mentally preparing for the next section. The highly descriptive phrases attached to the subject would evoke different senses, creating multiple pathways for them to retrieve the memory. And these public recitations could be a bit of an odyssey in and of themselves. The poem is 12,109 lines, and the full telling of the story could take days. When they finally wrote it down, scholars in Alexandria had to divide it into multiple books, specifically 24 books, one for each letter in the Greek alphabet. Number 2. Scientists believe they have figured out the exact date when the solar eclipse mentioned in the Odyssey actually happened. In the 20th book, a seer named Theoclymenus predicts doom for the suitors and describes the sun vanishing from the sky. Researchers from Rockefeller University analyzed the passage along with other astronomical markers throughout the text. They tracked mentions of lunar phases and constellation positions that matched models based on current astronomical understanding and historical records. The team found that the poem was describing a total solar eclipse that actually happened. Calculations placed this total solar eclipse directly over the Greek Ionian Islands on April 16, 1178 BCE. And this date lines up with the estimated historical time frame after the Trojan War. The inclusion of an actual astronomical event like this indicates that the oral tradition accurately recounted some key elements over centuries. And what makes this really interesting is it suggests the mythological story is at least based on some true historical events. Number 3. Some researchers believe the mythical monsters in the Odyssey were meant to warn people of actual dangers in the Mediterranean Sea. Odysseus encounters creatures like the Scylla, a six-headed monster, and the Charybdis, a massive whirlpool that swallows ships. Historians comparing clues in the text with maps of the area suggest this specific encounter happened in the Strait of Messina, a narrow channel that separates the island of Sicily from mainland Italy. The strait has powerful tidal currents and whirlpools that pose significant dangers to small vessels. Ancient sailors didn't have the tools and data to explain these water conditions, so they personified the hazardous currents as terrifying beasts to warn others about the dangers in different areas. Excavations on the island of Ithaca also found ruins matching the description of Odysseus's palace dating back to the 13th century BCE, suggesting the mythical journey was set in real-world locations. Number 4. Homer is listed as the author of the Odyssey, but scholars debate whether Homer actually existed. Historians and literary scholars have spent centuries debating what they call the Homeric question. There are no contemporaneous historical records or biographical texts detailing the life of a man named Homer, so many modern experts believe he wasn't actually one historical figure. Instead, they say the name likely served as a catch-all title for generations of traveling rhapsodes. This series of unnamed poets memorized, refined, and expanded the verses over hundreds of years in a rich oral tradition before scribes finally wrote it down on papyrus scrolls around the 6th century BCE. What's really interesting is even though Homer may have never even actually existed, there is a common image of him as a solitary, blind genius. And that image actually came from the authors themselves, likely writing a flattering version of themselves into the story of the Odyssey. In the 8th book, Odysseus meets a highly respected storyteller named Demodocus, who's completely blind but blessed by the gods with the gift of beautiful song. Readers and historians have long suspected this character was a clever self-insert tribute to the bards themselves. They say including a highly respected storyteller could have been an attempt to elevate the status of storytellers more broadly. And that character became the basis for how pretty much the entire world pictured the legendary author for the next 3,000 years. And our 5th and final fun fact for today. The Odyssey is sort of the quintessential hero's journey and still continues to captivate audiences even thousands of years after it was first written. The Odyssey started off with a narrative technique known as in medias res, a Latin phrase meaning in the middle of things. Instead of starting at the beginning of the story, the text opens near the end of the 10-year journey. The audience learns about monster encounters through flashbacks when Odysseus tells his story to a foreign court. This framed narrative structure creates a little bit of mystery that's slowly revealed while simultaneously pulls the audience into the ongoing action. This story structure is so powerful, writers still use it across all genres today. In his famous book, Hero with a Thousand Faces, Joseph Campbell compared elements of mythology from different cultures and found common characteristics he called the monomyth or hero's journey. Whether we're talking about ancient warriors or space cowboys in a galaxy far, far away, the overall narrative arc models the hero's journey where a protagonist faces trials in an unfamiliar world before returning home transformed. The latest version of the Odyssey is breaking new ground in film. The director Christopher Nolan's 2026 movie adaptation is the first feature film shot entirely on IMAX film cameras. IMAX cameras are big, heavy, and expensive. Their film is about twice as big as regular film, but it gives them the ability to capture more detail in every frame. One of the biggest obstacles, though, is the noise. IMAX cameras sound like a lawnmower as they run through the reels of film, and this creates challenges recording dialogue in scenes. Engineers constructed big, heavy, like 300-pound sound containment systems called a blimp to block the camera noise, while carefully positioned mirrors allow it to perfectly capture the actor's eye lines. In addition to blocking the unwanted sound using baffles, they used directional mics and even editing tools that can isolate unwanted sound frequencies. In the end, all the extra work and added expense allow the story to be seen in stunning detail on massive, curved IMAX screens that overwhelm your field of vision, not just showing you the hero's journey, but making you feel like you're traveling along with him. Now for some news you can use. For all those students listening, here's a little tip that can help you retain lots of information. Ancient bards sang all 12,109 lines of the Odyssey using a strict repetitive rhythm called dactylic hexameter. When you need to memorize a difficult list of terms, historical dates, or a complex formula, try setting the information to the tune of a familiar song or tap a steady beat on your desk while you're reciting it. The rhythm acts as a structural framework for your memory. If you forget a specific word, the beat of the song naturally guides your brain toward the missing syllables. I may be revealing my age a bit here, but when I was in junior high and I needed to memorize a list of all the prepositions and linking verbs, I wrote the list out and then spent a week singing it to the tune of Basket Case by Green Day. It temporarily ruined the song for me, but I retained the information for years. Now, if you're not musically inclined, using evocative imagery can help information stick in your mind. In the Odyssey, bards used highly descriptive phrases permanently attached to a subject like rosy-fingered dawn or gray-eyed Athena. Instead of just the dry facts, give them highly specific, memorable titles in your notes. There's a psychological concept called elaborative encoding. By attaching a sensory, funny, or weird descriptive tag to a plain fact, you make the memory richer and create more pathways for your brain to retrieve it. And this is another one I've experienced firsthand. About 25 years ago, I needed to memorize the symbols on the periodic table. I remember talking with a classmate about the challenge, and he was sharing the mnemonic devices he came up with to memorize various elements, especially the ones where the symbol wasn't just the first letter or two of the element's name. He said he was struggling with tungsten because the symbol was W and he couldn't see the connection. I don't know why, but I just said, "That's easy. Just remember what tungsten." He called me an idiot and went back to cramming for the test, but I ran into him the next day and he said the teacher actually asked for the symbol of tungsten on the test, and all he could think of was me pronouncing it with the W as what tungsten, and he got it right. We laughed at the time, but even 25 years later, I still remember the symbol for tungsten is W because it was just so ridiculous. Finally, the moment you've been waiting for. At the beginning of the episode, I asked, did the story of the Trojan Horse really happen? This one's a fallacy. While the city of Troy really did exist, and archaeological evidence shows it was destroyed by warfare and fire around 1180 BCE, modern historians generally agree that a giant hollow wooden horse full of soldiers is pure mythology. There's absolutely no historical or archaeological evidence to support it. Scholars believe the horse was likely a metaphor. Some say it represented a siege engine, like a battering ram covered in damp horse hides to protect against flaming arrows. Others suggest it was an allegory for an earthquake because Poseidon was the god of both horses and earthquakes, so they think it might have been an earthquake that breached the city's massive walls. Either way, the consensus among historians is that a literal wooden horse was ancient fiction, not historical fact. Now, I hope you enjoyed learning a bit about the Odyssey with me today, and be sure to tune in every weekday for even more fun facts. Fun Facts Daily is an Airwave Media podcast. It was written, recorded, mixed, and edited by me, Kyle Wood. Thanks for sharing a part of your day with me. Be sure to follow Fun Facts Daily on your favorite podcast app so you can keep the good stuff coming your way every day. And if you like the show, please do me a favor and leave a kind rating, review, or just tell your friends about it.